I think that the liquidity conditions, remain quite adequate and sound. I think that what we did see, especially in terms of the external liquidity, was a big shock back in March. But thanks to the coordinated action of central banks, and that, of course, included Bank Indonesia, I think that the market participants have been assured that there was ample liquidity available. And I think that that has actually come back to the markets into the latter half of April and May. So we have not really seen any more major outflows. And we do see that BI has ensured that there is ample liquidity available to the banking system, both in kind of the short term, but also the government with its fiscal packages ensuring that there is also going to be liquidity into the medium term to allow banks to extend loans and then to continue to lend.
But we're facing a very uncertain time like this. How strong do you think, in your point of view, our liquidity in terms of the banking sectors at the moment?
The banking sector is extremely well capitalized. So I think that this is, that there was lessons that were learned from the '97 financial crisis. And I think that in terms of the soundness of the financial sector, that's something that was always of paramount importance to policymakers. We do see that the Indonesian financial sector is relatively small. Net interest margins are large. So there are some issues about development of the financial sector. But one area that was always a bright spot was on the soundness and on the adequacy of capital of the sector. So I think that that is going to serve it well in a time of volatility like now.
But we do see, and we're seeing like smaller banks are having some kind of liquidity problems. Like, for example, they're now issuing more and more stocks in the market. So what is the current situation like for smaller banks in Indonesia?
Indonesia does have a lot of banks, including a lot of small banks. I think that this is something that needs to be looked at in terms of the development of the financial sector and the banking sector, including the possibility of maybe some banks merging with larger banks. This is not something that I have looked at very carefully, but I think that within a system, if you have a good resolution system, if you have a good legal system, and I think that OJK has been evolving towards that, I think that the fact that some banks occasionally will have some issues, that doesn't point to any kind of systemic liquidity issues. And this is what I was pointing out in my previous answer, that for the system as a whole, even if there may be, occasionally a couple of banks facing some difficulties, the system as a whole is very sound.